Oh, we've just been doing some videos on pigeons for Gerry Clements that are going for sale on the auction site. So I just thought I'd take this opportunity to ask him a few questions about his pigeons and his racing. So I have Gerry Clements here from Ordenshaw, Manchester, an extremely good national flyer, won many positions in the Midland National, the National Flying Club, Northwest Classic, etc. And has been racing pigeons since 1954, is it?
1954.
So plenty of experience. So just a few random questions, there's nothing special about this at all. How do you go about selecting your pigeons?
The easy answer would be I look at the eye, I look at the wing, I look at the formation of the pigeons, but in all honesty, I've got one thing that I do with pigeons now, the basket is the master. I have an indication of what I like, what type of pigeon, the balance of the pigeon. And the balance must be right in a pigeon. If it's got no balance, you'll never win anything. But again, it can have balance and no brains and it'll win nothing. So you want a combination of balance and brains. And there's only one way of getting brains in pigeons, and that's the basket. Work on the pigeons that come back a good time or winning performances. Work your loft around those pigeons and you'll never be firing.
Which is the best performance you've done in national racing, taking into account you've had so many?
Well, it's a toss-up between, I've won the Midlands National twice, and when Daniela won it, the first 6 pigeons were in 5 different counties, which made it a fairly even race. But then when Hercules won it, that was a day when they were released in a northeast wind, finishing in a northwest wind, and the velocity was around the 1200 mark, which is a real hard race for a pigeon coming into the northwest when you're given 100 odd mile overfly away. Those are 2, but I always go back to 1993 when I had a pigeon called Natalie, and she was 16th open in the national in a northeast wind when the clouds were on the floor, drizzly dank day, northeast all the way. The 14 of the 15 pigeons that beat her were in Somerset in the southern counties. And that day she did almost 10 hours from St Maiden. I think was a superb performance for a young bird.
What is the best pigeon you've ever had? All-round pigeon?
The best all-round pigeon I've ever had was, he's still in the loft now, he's 19 years old, he was 19 on the 10th of January, an old cock called Tracker, blue-white flighted cock. And as an all-round pigeon, he won 3 first feds on the land. I sent him across his first channel race. He was 3rd Open Northwest Classic, his 2nd one. He was 1st Open Northwest Classic Wrens, 2,000 pigeons. And it was again a northeast wind, dirty day, a lot of rain about, and he won that race by 26 minutes. But all the pigeons in my loft now, of the Bushard lines, have all got his blood in them, including a grandson from him this year, from Saints, and I timed him in on the night, and he was doing 13 3/4 hours, and again into headwind all the way. So they're still winning today, at 19 years old, that the grandchildren were winning from. I think he's probably the best pigeon I've ever owned.
What do you feed them on? Is there any special feed, or is it just a general mix you can buy?
No, I set a lot of store by feeding this, which I think in today's climate everybody must, to get the extra yards out of your pigeons you have to do. And what I do, I get 3 top of the range Woodwood mixes from 3 different companies, mix them together, and that's what the general feed is. I never break pigeons down. The only depurative I ever use is for youngsters when they're getting going. I give them a light feed in the morning with the Purita, but generally speaking, even on the return from races, they've had a good high carbohydrate mix.
You said you'd never break pigeons down.
Yeah.
Is that because you fly the longer races, or does it apply to any land races that you do?
Well, I can only take you back to when I was sprinting. A lot of the races were sprinted and middle distance. I never broke them down then, and I've on record of taking the first 12 in the Fed on 4 separate weeks. When if it was electronic timing like it is now, I would have probably took the first 30 or 35, 40 pigeons when they dropped us a team together. Those pigeons were never broken down. I've never known any reason for it, and I know plenty of people that fly the pigeons and they've break them down religiously, you know, to Purita, etc. when they come back up till the Tuesday or Wednesday and fly well. It's just something that I found that when you had headwinds, northeast winds especially, them pigeons need to have the corn in them for the week. And you can't judge, and now those days you couldn't judge from Sunday to Saturday what the weather was going to be, so I never took the chance on that. They just, my pigeons were fed for the worst case scenario, you know, which was a headwind.
Right. Do you give them any seeds or additional things besides normal corn?
Yes, I do. I give them peanuts and sunflower hearts, build up towards get the fats into them for the longer races. The seeds I tend to keep away from it because I think most people, if they're looking at, they feed a lot of seed in that, they'll find with the pigeons sometimes they'll get a bit, what I call butterfly, coming to the loft. They're like butterflies. They're frightened of the loft, they're frightened of their own shadow. You'd think there was a cat around or a fox or stoat or whatever. And the hawks attacking them. It's not. It's whatever the seed does when it fires them up, it thins the blood out, and then the pigeons just get a bit scatty. And the type of pigeons I've got, I wouldn't be looking to maybe have a night out through mismanagement of giving too much seed, which would happen if they fly and fly and fly. And then all of a sudden they'll come down as if nothing happened. And that was one or two decent pigeon men over the years that I'd heard from that pointed me in that direction.
You hear a lot about health in pigeons. Do you give them anything in the water or on the corn or any other form of antibiotic type stuff to get them right?
No. I stopped doing that, Les, because what I found with antibiotics was that it was downhill the train. That's what we're at. We're going to ruin our pigeons, leave pigeons with no immune system, getting weaker by the minute. And people have gone and taken it further, they're injecting them with antibiotics, they're injecting them with all sorts. But what I do, I have a tea that I make up myself, and it's cider vinegar, a good probiotic, a herbal nasal product, and the fourth one is garlic juice. And those 4 products is in the water every day from the day that the youngins are weaned. Well, not quite from the day they're weaned. I give them the first day, I put a drinker in and they can have a bath in it and look at it and get used to it. But after that, it goes in the water every day of their life. And touch wood, since I've been doing that this last 2 or 3 years, 4 years, that the pigeons now have got a health about them that I never had before.
How often do you train the pigeons?
Woodward cocks, I train. I start at the beginning of the season. I exercise them in the morning and for 20 minutes, back in, half an hour, back in, and build up to an hour. And I exercise them for an hour every morning. I'll give them 5, 6, 7, 8 tosses before the first race. And once they've had the first race, they never get trained again. They exercise at home, an hour in the morning and an hour at night. And sometimes I have a job getting them in after an hour, because the doors are open and they'll fly and they'll fly and fly. I've got to try and get them in. Some days I can't get them in towards the end of the week. There's a natural health in the pigeons that they do exercise extremely well. Youngsters, I train them every day. Those youngsters get trained every day. And I start in the first training toss is at 30 miles. I've always maintained that the pigeons that you lose in the first training toss, you're going to lose no matter where you train them from. You'll lose them somewhere along the line. So over the years now we're doing a 30 mile, I don't lose very many. I don't fly in the club so much now, but I send them in training races, and the first training race is around 145 miles. And touch wood again, up to now I don't have a lot of losses with them.
Do you race widowwood cocks, or do you race hens as well?
Widowwood cocks.
You don't race any hens at all?
No. Although, in saying that, I keep having a think about racing one or two hens, but I have done in the past. I've raced usually half a dozen hens or something like that, you know, and I've done it purely to keep the constitution of my hens going, for looking for pigeons for the stock lot. And those hens would fly twice a week, Wednesday and Saturday, right the way through from the beginning of the season to Saints. And whatever was left, was left. And I remember one year in particular I started with 6, and I sent the 6 to Saints, and I timed 5 in 20 minutes, 538 miles. And they'd been twice a week up to the channel programme, and then they'd gone every channel race.
How far do you race your young birds, yearlings, 2-year-olds?
Young birds, I'm pretty severe with my young birds. Like I say, they'll start the first training race from 145 miles, and that's usually with a federation that's miles away from where the line of flight on the pigeons. I can make it as awkward as I possibly can for them. And they'll have 3 or 4 races, training race like that. I'll send them then to the Young Bird National 4 years, which is 360 or thereabouts. So, but the young birds go anywhere between 300 and 350, and that's the regime for them. I will pick some of the bigger cocks and leave them at home, because I don't want to put them to too much, under too much strain as young birds when they're still growing. Because at the end of the day, the young birds for 7 months, their old ones for 7 years. The yearlings, I like them to have 2 channel races, preferably one with the Midlands National and one with the National Flying Club. Alternating them across, so they get the experience of both organisations, and they will go no further than 400 miles, the yearlings. I like to stop them at 400. The odd ones will go to 450, which is show line.
Does there ever come a point where you think that they've now gone far enough, they've won well, I'll put them in the stock loft, or do they have to race and race and race? I mean, if you got a good pigeon at yearling 2-year-old, would you stop it if you thought it was going to be, or let's say, would you stop it on performances?
Well, you can draw your own conclusions. I can give you 4 instances of things that's happened. I mentioned Tracker before. A son of Tracker, young Tracker, and he bred me 2 classic winners. He bred me any number of good pigeons in the national score. He was one of my top breeding cocks. And he was 3rd combine as a young bird. And I was really looking forward to racing him as a yearling. And he's walking up and down the platform, and I'm looking at him, I thought. And there was something come into my head. I thought, no, you should not be raced. Got him in his section, took him out, went in, took a stock cock out of the stock loft and gave him his box as a yearling. He raced one as a young. That turned out one of my best breeding cocks. Hercules, he did all his work as a young and yearling, and as a 2-year-old, as a 2-year-old, I was looking at them and I couldn't get my pigeons quite right. There was just something not right about the pigeons. I thought, I'm not racing these pigeons till I get them right. And I still don't know to this day what they looked okay, they acted okay, there was bad droppings, no snots, no nothing. They just weren't right. And in the meantime, I'd bred one because of his performance as a youngster when he was second open in the classic futurity race in the North East Wind against all the odds. I thought I'll breed a youngster off him, and I bred a young grizzled cock off him, the Woolly Tass lines. And he was 15th open in the BACC for me from Fillets as a yearling. So I thought, on that round, I thought, I'll just save that cock a bit. So as a 2-year-old, during that year then, I had 5 youngsters off him, 4 of them all scored, 2 in the national. So I thought, that cock's got to be put away. He was put away as he only raced as a yearling. And I've now got a cock 606. I put him in the stock loft this year. He's done 500 miles plus 5 times on the day. And super busy he is. And he's now, but the Hawk had a go at him last year. He had a go at him with his 2-year-old. He had a go at him last year. I thought, I'm not playing about anymore because the third time might not be so lucky. So I put him in the stock loft this year. But of the Saints cock, he's done 5 times as well, Saints, but he didn't do it all on the day. He only done 3 times on the day, twice the next morning. He's 5-year-old. He's going in the stock loft this year.
What about hens? How do you put them to stock? If you're not racing them?
Predominantly, I like the daughters of my best racing cocks to go in the stock loft.
Yeah.
Or if I purchase pigeons, I really like to see the daughters of the good winning cocks.
Is there anything else you could tell them that's helpful to them, or somebody's bound to watch it?
Yeah, just be careful when you're buying pigeons. I would advise anybody that's starting in pigeons, or those who've got pigeons, just cancel the home and world and give the wife your checkbook, and then you can't make no mistake by buying inferior pigeons. There's lots of pigeons about now, and you look at the glossy photographs, the magazines, and they're all world beaters. But look at them, analyse what they're actually telling you, analyse what they're saying. And unless they're giving you pigeons that you can actually say, right, that is bred that, and there's a ring number, or a colour or a race point for it. And the instance is I was at a charity auction earlier in the year, and I specifically took this old cock, the Cromwell of '96, and he was the mainstay of that auction for people with learning disabilities. But as you know, Les, I give you a list of every pigeon or every grandchildren that he had bred. I give you a ring number, a colour, and a race point of what them pigeons had won. And there's too many people say, oh, breeding winners for fun, breeding winners for this. Well, prove it. The best breeding pigeon I ever owned was Natalie. And she gave me 13 different pigeons to win races. I'm not talking about adding them up at all, there's plenty more. She was grandmother of 35 different pigeons to win races. Now I see the books and I don't see any that can match that. That was, and if you think she bred for 10 years or 12 years she bred for, and she's bred, that's one pigeon, or just over one pigeon a year that she bred that won a race. There's not many like that about, and that's the calibre of pigeons you're looking for. But when you look at these glossy magazines, they're all winners, they're all good mate bees.
Yeah, just a quick one on the breeding side. If you put a pair of pigeons to stock, how many would you expect to breed off them before you've tested them in a year?
Yeah, in a year. That's a difficult question, because ideally you would like to get at least 8 or 10 off them to test them. But in today's world, the 9 and 10 are very not, unless you're floating the eggs. You're not likely to get the racing and the proper racing. They're too young to race. So I would think an ideal number is 6.
Yeah.
And if they don't breed anything else from 6, they want to be going out the door. And for a long, long time in my loft, because you know I sell a few pigeons. People ring me up looking for pigeons, so I've only ever had most of my stock pigeons, 2 younglings off them each year. And the criteria was that if I couldn't have something off them out of 2 youngsters, they weren't worth keeping.
I mean, when you mentioned that charity sale, it did show how your pigeons were in demand.
Yeah.
Because there was 10 pigeons.
Yeah.
Young birds averaged over £100 a piece.
150 the average.
Yeah,
150
the average.
for late breds.
For late breds, yes. So that's the quality of pigeons that are in demand. Anyway, thank you for your time.
No bother, lads.
And we